All right, one last look at your traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here on your Thursday. Couple things to report. Got two right lanes blocked at I-26 westbound at 277. An accident at I-26 eastbound at Piney Grove. One at I-26 eastbound at I-20. And then one at Longs Pond Road and Two Notch. Today, high of 89 with plenty of sunshine. There's traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here on The Game. Nine o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here. Navigating closer to the weekend, closer to another full slate of football action starting tonight with some Thursday night football and on into a full weekend of college and pro ball where, Jack, we continue to wonder exactly if Lenore Sellers is going to be playing this weekend or not.
Yeah, it's the big question here. And seems like there's some good news out there from ESPN's Pete Thamel, who did say that it seems like Sellers could potentially play on Saturday. He was practicing yesterday, according to him. And there were other people out there with sources that did say the same thing. So it seems like that's all signs pointing towards him being able to play on Saturday. Again, Shane Beamer did say earlier this week, while he didn't give away any big details about Sellers, he did say, like, you have to practice on Tuesday or Wednesday to be able to play on Saturday. Like, you can't not practice those days, then expect to be out there on Saturday. So that's pretty good. Now, is that going to be with 100% certainty? Don't know, because he's listed as questionable on the injury report right now. And keep in mind, Missouri did the same thing last year with Brady Cook in this exact game, where every day leading into Saturday, like heck, hours before game time, we thought Drew Pine was still going to be starting at quarterback for the Tigers. Their backup quarterback transferred from Notre Dame and some other schools, I think Arizona State too. That's besides the point. Brady Cook played that day. So maybe this is Beamer trying to, be a little bit petty here and get back a drink. I'm not sure exactly.
I think Brady Cook was listed as doubtful for like that entire week too. Like, if I remember,
was he doubtful? I thought maybe it was.
I think he might have been doubtful, because I remember when we were previewing it going in, like, we thought with a lot of certainty that Drew Pine was going to play, and then before kickoff, it's like, oh, hey, by the way, Brady Cook's good to go, and I was like, oh, okay, that was unexpected. And again, these coaches know that they can game this a little bit, and I think I was listening to the Power Mizzou podcast earlier on this week, and then we had Gabe Diermond on yesterday during the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, but they mentioned that last year when Missouri played Texas A&M, Connor Wegman, I think, was banged up going into that game, and Eli Drinkwitz spent the entire week basically saying, well, Connor Wegman's not going to play, and Connor Wegman proceeded to play and have the game of his life when A&M just completely ran over Missouri. So I think he learned his lesson from that game, to where, and he said it, this week, that, hey, we expect Sellers to play. They've also entertained the idea of, hey, if Luke Doty plays, it's going to be the same kind of thing, same kind of offense. So I think Drink learned his lesson from the A&M game last year, where they are preparing for both, but I think they highly anticipate the fact that Sellers is, in their opinion, going to play this weekend.
And to answer the question, I did go back to a story I wrote before kickoff last year. Brady Cook had been listed as doubtful, so you were right. Listed as doubtful the entire week, and then he was listed as a game time decision on Saturday. So there you go. I mean, I don't know. I mean, and to kind of speak about Wegman a little bit with the whole Missouri situation last year and how it relates to this year. Well, in his press conference this week, Drink has been talking about how they're preparing like Lenoris is going to play this week. They know the type of quarterback he is. I mean, he called him Heisman front runner, first team All-American, all this and that. So make no mistake, he's preparing like it's going to be Lenoir Sellers out there. But if it's not, he did say they will be ready, and he mentioned Luke Doty a little bit and whatnot. And that answers the other. Asked another question here. You know, what if it is Luke Doty out there? You know, how much does that change South Carolina's plans for this week? You know, if he's out there.
I mean, they're the similar types of quarterbacks. You know, obviously, it's not like you go from Sellers being this dual threat to Luke Doty, who's just a statued pocket passer. And we saw last week against Vanderbilt that, man, they were running Luke Doty quite a bit. He got to use his legs on several occasions, which him being as athletic as he is makes a lot of sense. So the game plan, I don't think really changes a whole lot. You obviously deal with a much more talented quarterback when you're talking about Lenoir Sellers, one that is capable of making better throws down the field, where Luke Doty is certainly a little bit more limited. And we saw that last week with some of the overthrows and underthrows that he had. Now, he was under pressure a lot in that game, so that certainly didn't help. But you deal with the same type of quarterback, but you deal with a better version of that with Lenoir Sellers, which obviously makes sense, which is why he's your starting quarterback. So yeah, I think Drink and Missouri have been locked in on making sure they're prepared for all possibility. Heck, maybe they're preparing for Jimmy Francis and Brandon Cunningham too, like Shane listed off, the other day when talking about quarterbacks, just to make sure that he keeps Drink on his toes, I guess.
Yeah, guys that won't even make the trip to Missouri. Like, yeah, okay.
Listen, if Jimmy Francis gets in the game, either you're blowing them out by a ton, or we're in a lot of trouble injury-wise.
Yeah, that's a very good point there. But yeah, no, I mean, look, it's good to see that Sellers seems to be. I mean, we'll see what happens on Saturday, but seems like he should be out there. I don't see why he wouldn't be at this stage in the game, barring something unforeseen happening. But it does beg the question, though, is he going to be 100%? Is he going to be able to do everything you want him to do? And I know a big talking point this week has stemmed from that question I asked about, like running the football. Like, what are we going to see out of Sellers, not just this week, but rest of the season running the football?
And that's a good question that we will dive into in just a second, but it is 9 o'clock, and as always, we've got to kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped. Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm, sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. As we were just mentioning a moment ago, last night we did get the first availability report of the week for South Carolina versus Missouri. Obviously, our biggest concern is what the status of Lenoir Sellers is going into this matchup, and he was listed as questionable. Again, per Shane Beamer earlier on in the week, they do have a policy where if you're not practicing on Tuesday and Wednesday, you will not play that upcoming weekend. But Pete Thamel of ESPN did report that Sellers was at least practicing yesterday, per his insight. And look, Pete Thamel has no ties or affiliations either way. He's not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. He's just reporting the information that he's being provided. So if he says that, I'm going to assume that was the case. How much Sellers is practicing, what he was doing in practice, we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, he could have, suited up and just done some low impact, not very strenuous type of drills, just try and keep himself fresh. We don't know, and we're not going to know until Saturday gets here. So you can't say with 100% certainty that Sellers is going to play, though I like the prospects that he's questionable and has been practicing, because that gives me a good feeling that he probably will.
Yeah, no, totally. Again, going back to it, like Shane Beamer said earlier this week, like, you practice Tuesday or Wednesday or both days, like, you're going to be able to play on Saturday. If not, you're not. So it doesn't matter who you are, is basically how he put it. And so that's a good sign. Like, now, we don't know to what extent he was practicing out there. I think that's the one thing that's kind of missing here is, like, okay, he was out there, but was he, obviously not 100% full go, like with, getting tackled and stuff. That's not going to happen in practice. But Is he out there doing everything everyone else would do is kind of my question here. But it's good to hear that he's out there at the very least. And that's some good progress for someone that looked like they probably got a concussion from that game.
And concussions are so tricky, as we talked about yesterday. No two are alike. You can't say, hey, here's this other guy that got a concussion. He was back the next week and perfectly fine. They're so different and so unique. And obviously, you're talking about cognitive brain function here that can affect a lot of different things that you do. So we won't truly know until Saturday. You get the final availability report 90 minutes before kickoff. So that's 5:30 Eastern on Saturday when we'll know for sure if Sellers is going to be a go that night or not. But you brought up this point a moment ago, and I think it's important given the context of what we've been talking about all week. If he does play this weekend, do you risk him getting hit and further injuring himself? Because once, as we know, looking at guys like Tua and stuff in the NFL, when you have one concussion, it makes you more susceptible to getting other ones, especially when when you're in that short window from just having one a week before. So we've been talking a lot about, hey, they need to run them more, they need to do this, they need to do that, which Beamer pointed out that, hey, the concepts are still there, we're still calling the same plays, but you see with your eyes that he is not taking the ball and running nearly as much as he did a year ago. And when you look at this weekend, there could be a possibility of them saying, hey, we need you to run even less because we need you to take as few amount of hits as possible so we don't lose you for a longer period of time if you were to get another concussion.
That's the thing. I think that is, and I would hope that's not how they play this game. If you're playing it with any risk out there, because you're going to take hits in this game. That is inevitable. Like, if he's going to be out there, you should treat him like he's going to be 100%, right? If he's not, then he should not be out there, right? Like if you're so worried about him getting hit and getting another concussion and whatnot, and making him run the football less, then that defeats the purpose of why he should be out there, because that's the type of quarterback that he is. So if he's out there, let him do his thing. If he's not feeling 100%, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, he needs to be running the football for South Carolina to win this game.
Yeah, well, and we know this offense operates at his best when he is able to use his legs, which is why people have been so frustrated watching it through the first 3 weeks so far this year, because that part of the game has not been there. And we broke it down yesterday, and Chris had a good breakdown on Gamecock Central about what plays were being called and what the different run types with zones, gaps, and scrambles and all that kind of stuff have been, and the numbers aren't that far off from where they were a year ago, but the decision-making, the processing, what Sellers is doing and being coached to do is obviously different than what he was a year ago, because he is not taking the ball and running nearly as much as he was. And you're seeing, again, the offense is averaging about 14 points a game right now, which is not good enough and won't be good enough this weekend against Missouri if you want to go in there and win that game and get yourself to at least 1-1 in conference play.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're going to have to move the ball. Like, here's the thing. I would say you don't necessarily need to rely solely on Sellers to run the football to win this game, but you better be using him a little bit in the ground game, because let's say your run game with Rasul Faison, Oscar Adaway is not effective in this one. You become so one-dimensional, and that makes it easier for Mizzou to pinpoint how to stop this offense, especially if they know Lenoris is not running this game. But make no mistake, I think Missouri is going to try to take away the run with Sellers regardless.
Well, he at least needs to pose that threat, right, to where they have to dedicate. And again, Vanderbilt was doing this on Saturday, and going back to the ball game against Illinois, that was their MO of, hey, don't let this guy beat you with his feet, because that's where he's at his best. So if you can at least pose the threat of him running to take away attention from Faison, take away attention from receivers, whatever it may be, that helps out the rest of the offense if Sellers is good enough to go through and do everything else that he needs to do as a quarterback. So the at least threat of him running needs to be there, right?
It has to be. It has to be to some extent. You don't need to run him every single play, but again, if he's 100%, or even if he's not, you got to have him at least be effective in the run game a little bit to try and win this one.
And maybe it's a situation where it's like, hey, if you want to flush the pocket, okay, but let's try and get to the sidelines. Let's try and take as few hits as possible, again, because you're dealing with concussion, and that's obviously something that's very, very tricky. So maybe you're coaching him to just be more smart with the runs that he does take, and try not to put yourself in a bad situation, where you could, again, further hurt yourself and further hurt the team. So again, it's all it's all speculative at this point. We don't know until Saturday if he's going to play or not. I like the prospects of him at least practicing and being listed as questionable as opposed to doubtful or out, which would be the most extreme scenario here. So, we'll see. But I've got my fingers crossed that he's going to be able to be out there this weekend.
Should be. We'll see.
We'll get into what Mike Shula had to say yesterday about the offense and some of the other guys on offense that could help Lenore Sellers out this upcoming weekend. That's up next. It is the Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Veltri on your Thursday on the Game.
Yeah, I would say there's a, when you offensively, there's a lot of, you work in the off season or training camp, things like that, to have kind of a core set of plays, running game wise, passing game wise, whether or not it's whoever's running the ball, running backs, quarterbacks, whatever, and then you try to build off that with variations. And I think, all through my career and in every offense I've been in, I think offenses have that. You have a base and a foundation, and then you have, variations off that, whether or not it's a similar run with a different add-on, so to speak, or same exact run with a different formation, or same run with the same formation.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. That was Mike Shula, Gamecocks offensive coordinator, talking to the media yesterday when posed with the question of what Coach Beamer had to say on Tuesday about, hey, we're running the same stuff. Shula kind of backed that up. And again, there's variations of things. They're going to be a little bit different because he's the play caller now as opposed to Dow Loggins. But the fundamental scheme of the offense does seem to be the same. But as we've talked about earlier on this week, Jack, the decision-making of Sellers keeping the ball, the decision-making of Sellers staying in the pocket is what's different than a year ago, which is why, part of the reason why we haven't seen him running as much as we all would like to see him run.
It seems like to me, just watching, again, he's tucked it and ran a few times for what we've seen like last year. And I go back to the Virginia Tech game, and I feel like we saw that a little bit in that game, even though the numbers don't fully represent that because of the sacks and whatnot. But I feel like Sellers has been a little bit more conscientious of what to do with the football. Like, I think they are trying to get him to a point where, like, hey, if the pocket is there, throw the football. Like, I think that's what we've seen a lot more. You see it a lot on that first drive against Vanderbilt the other night. I don't even think he ran the football at all, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was a lot of clean throws out in the pocket, and he was very good to open this game. And so
he had 2 runs on that opening drive.
He did? He did.
Yeah.
Watching it back, I just remember a lot of clean throws early on in that game. So, but anyway, point being, he's throwing the ball a lot more, it seems like, at times. But he's also running it a little bit. It's just not as effective as you would like. So I think it's trying to find that perfect balance of, like, hey, like, run the football when you can, but it has to go for bigger gains than what you're getting right now. But also, if you have a clean pocket, step up and make a throw.
Yeah, and again, we knew this was kind of the MO of the offseason was to make him a more well-rounded quarterback, becoming a better passer and all that kind of stuff, which is great, but nobody wanted that to be at the sacrifice of doing what he did best a season ago, and you can see, and Chris Clark's got a good article up on Gamecock Central that truly details the different types of run plays that they had, or at least the options for Sellers to run in each and every game last year compared to this year, and the numbers aren't all that much different. It's just that decision-making and what he's deciding on the field is what's varied from a year ago, and I'm assuming that's based on what they're trying to do from a development standpoint with Noah Sellers to make him better at the other aspects of being a quarterback, though, again, it's hurt the run game, and, again, the offense is not quite the same when 16 isn't using his legs like he was a year ago.
That's the main thing, man. That's what makes this offense go right there, is him using those legs to run the football and break out of tackles and stuff. And you hope you could see that this weekend. Kind of going back to that whole discussion we had earlier about, okay, like, are they going to limit him at all? Are they going to let him just do his thing out there, even if he's 100%, even if he's not? I mean, you think you got to. If you want South Carolina to win this game, your best chance comes with Lenore's doing what he normally has done, running the football.
My question for this weekend, again, I believe Sellers is going to play. Don't take that for 100% truth, but it seems to me that it could be trending in that direction. And again, are they going to want him to take as many hits because he's got a concussion? We don't know. Regardless, whether it's Sellers, whether it's Luke Doty, whoever, other guys have to step up on this offense because that's what we haven't really seen a lot of this year so far. Again, Harbor had a good game against Virginia Tech. Really should have had 2 touchdowns there. But, when Sellers went down the other night, he didn't suddenly take the game over. I know he was getting open, and maybe Luke Doty didn't see him on a couple spots there, but his impact wasn't as big as you would have wanted it to be. So who stands out to you as somebody that could help out Sellers, Luke Doty, whoever's playing quarterback this weekend elsewhere on offense?
I'll go. Rasul Faison. I think that's someone that can certainly help. He was doing a lot of good things early on in this game that helped the offense move the football. Like if you want to be consistent on offense, you got to have a good run game. And let's say it's not Sellers. Let's say it's not Doty necessarily. It's got to be Faison. It has to be. This is what you brought him in for. And 74 yards last week on the ground is fine. Like a touchdown, that's all good and dandy. But let's get 100-plus yards this weekend. I mean, let's see a big-time performance. That has been missing in the run game this entire season so far, and it would really, really help if Faison's able to run through the teeth of this Missouri defense, which is going to be tough, but do it and go out there and have a big game.
Yeah, I would probably put Rasul Faison as my number one, but just to be a little bit different, I would say it's probably a guy like Nick Harbor. Again, getting open, making plays, yards after catch, all those kind of things to help open up the pass game a little bit, because it's been okay, but it hasn't been phenomenal through the first couple of games either, which is why the offense is as, pedestrian as it has been up to this point. So everybody in the offense obviously needs to play well. Offensive line needs to block well, which, again, we give them credit. They were doing a better job last week, save for, the play where Sellers got hurt and Trevon Ball did not see the, free blitzer coming in there. At linebacker that obviously led to the injury. So everybody's got to step up. Everybody's got to do their job. And my goodness, like I said earlier, you can't go into Missouri and just expect 14 points to get it done. Like your defense is still, not maybe as good as it was a year ago. And we saw that on display this past week where they were missing tackles and all that kind of stuff. So I really think you go into this game this weekend thinking, hey, you got to score at least 30 points if you want to beat this Missouri team.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's a lot to ask for, but if you can go out there and do it, got a good chance to win this one. Missouri's been very, very good offensively this season. And, look, their real biggest opponent so far has been Kansas, and they won that game. So, they played well so far this year, and they're going to be definitely a tough out for the Gamecocks.
So how does the defense need to play? We'll get into what Clayton White had to say yesterday when talking to the media as we preview Missouri and what they do best on offense. Coming up next, as the Extra Point rolls along, Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's our Ed and Jack Beltry with you on your Thursday here on the game. We'll get into what Clayton White had to say in a moment, but I want to let you know, in case you haven't been listening, we've got a national cash contest going on here on the game where we're giving away $1,000 5 times a day. You just got to be listening out for the keywords, which will be, next one will be coming up here in about 10 minutes or so. So make sure you keep listening for your next opportunity to win some money. When you get the keyword, all you got to do is text it to 95819. Again, be listening out for that keyword coming up here in about 10 minutes for our national cash contest. As we look ahead to this weekend, defense is going to be of the utmost importance for South Carolina if they want to take down Missouri. And just like the past couple seasons, we know Missouri's going to come in here trying to run those outside zone plays. And Clayton White yesterday did talk about that with the media.
Yes, they've done a really good job of adding pieces to that puzzle. Truly believe that that offense is hard to defend, mainly because of the practice, trying to get the reps during the week. So our offensive is doing a really good job of replicating those plays. That's the only way to really have a chance to go out there and really contain those kind of numbers, like you said. But most importantly, we have to practice right and then kind of start really in January, kind of just emphasizing that different style of offense.
Jack, I'm concerned because I watched last weekend for South Carolina, struggle to tackle in space quite a bit for that spread option that Vanderbilt was running. Not exactly the same type of offense, but you are going to have to be getting some guys out in space to try and make some tackles this weekend. And my goodness, I hope they've improved from what they were doing last week.
Yeah, this should not come as a surprise, but Clayton was saying that they had their highest missed tackle total this past weekend against Vandy. So you missed so many tackles in that game, and you got to be better in that way. You also have to be better on third down. I think they kind of go hand in hand because some of those missed tackles were coming in third down situations. So, look, you got to be able to get off the field. I know we talk about the fact that the offense wasn't doing enough to help out the defense and all this and that, and the defense was out there for 35 minutes in that game. But that's also on them for not getting off the field when it mattered most. So, look, they got some stops here and there, but they got that interception late in the game. But at that point, the game was, kind of Vanderbilt was starting to distance themselves a little bit. So, hopefully this weekend, it should be a bigger challenge, I think, with trying to stop Beau Pribula and Ahmad Hardy and this what seems to be a pretty good Missouri offense so far. I know they lost a lot after last season with Brady Cook, Luther Bird, guys like that, Theo Weiss, but this is a very good offense still early on this year.
Well, and this is an offense that in the Beamer era has run all over South Carolina more often than not. Each and every year, here's the running totals going back to 2021, 258, 143, 213, and 144. And those those yards are not adjusted for sacks because Nate Noel himself ran for $150 against South Carolina last year. So we know Carolina struggles to stop this outside zone run scheme that that Missouri's going to bring to the table this weekend. And they bring in what might be the best running back in all of college football, in Ahmad Hardy, who is already tearing things up early on in the season, 250 yards on the ground last time out against Louisiana. Here's the stats that really blow your mind. He's forced 28 missed tackles so far and has 330 yards after contact, which are both best in the nation. So even if you do get a hand on him, even if you do get in good position, he's very likely to run past you or run through you.
That's insane. I mean, that's going to be a real challenge for South Carolina to stop this weekend, and that's the main thing. It's if you can't stop him, like, this Missouri offense is going to have a field day, in my opinion, because I think Beau Pribula is a very good quarterback. We know he's the Penn State transfer and all that good stuff, but I think it does start and end with trying to stop Ahmad Hardy and try to force Pribula to throw to these receivers that he has.
I will say this. I mentioned 330 yards after contact. He only has 462 yards on the season. I say only. He's 3 games in, which is a lot, but most of his yards are coming after contact. So that does tell me that you're at least going to be put in the position to be able to stop him, the position to get him to him very quickly after he gets the ball. It's just the task of bringing him down is the real struggle here.
It is. It is the real struggle here. I mean, this is a real big guy that we're talking about. I mean, just looks physically brooding when he's out there. And, if he's going for 100-plus yards in this game, you kind of wonder, okay, is South Carolina going to be able to win this game? Because if not, I mean, and hopefully South Carolina can win in the trenches in this one. Hopefully they can win the battle at the line of scrimmage, because we saw what happened last week. Dylan Stewart, Brian Thomas were pretty much non-factors in that game. I mean, Nick Barrett was really solid in that game, but I mean, besides that, like, South Carolina could have been so much better on the defensive line, and they need to be better this weekend for sure.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Dylan Stewart, because one thing that Vanderbilt did last week was they primarily just ran to the opposite side of where Dylan Stewart was, to where he couldn't have as big of an impact on the game. And we know that he put pressure on Diego Pavia a couple times, obviously got flagged for the pass interference and all that kind of stuff. But look, if I was an offensive coordinator, do the same thing. I'd say, all right, we don't want number 6 to affect this game. Let's make everything go to the left side now. And I imagine Missouri's probably going to be looking to do the same thing this year, because, again, you have a good other option at Brian Thomas Jr. on the other side that we've established. Hey, he's definitely that other guy opposite Dylan Stewart, but he has not been looked at as a game wrecker to where they're going to be afraid to run to his side like last year, where you had to choose between Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart. Like, Brian Thomas Jr. has not garnered that kind of reputation yet, so I imagine a lot of these outside zone runs are probably going to be going to the left on Saturday.
And that makes it a bigger task for Brian Thomas to go out there and do his thing. We saw what kind of game wrecker he can be a few weeks ago, and yes, it was against SC State, but we know he's a good player. I think it's time to just go out there and just do it. I mean, you're really needing him to step up, especially if this continues to be a trend where teams are going away from Stewart. Somebody's got to be better off that other side of the edge.
I do wonder as well that when you look at what happened last week, where, and this was premeditated a little bit, because Vanderbilt had been talking last week. Again, Bryce Henderson said what he said about Dylan Stewart leading to the matchup, so there was already a little bit of tension there. But, you know, Dylan Stewart got flagged for the roughing the passer call, where he, you know, took a couple extra steps and shoved Diego Pavia. And then at the very end of the game was obviously out of hand at that point, but he gets ejected for getting into it with Bryce Henderson, the guy that had been trash talking him earlier on in the week. And I think when you look at this, when you look at, you know, the situation that Dylan Stewart had last year, we got flagged for the gun celebration. You know, he's somebody that I feel like Missouri looks at that and says, we can get inside this guy's head. If we mess with him enough, we poke the bear enough, he can do something that could get himself tossed from this game that's going to help us out. And I imagine, you may not be able to see it and hear it all the time, but I imagine they're going to be trying to poke that bear as much as possible, seeing if they can get him to self-destruct himself.
It wouldn't be shocking at all if that is a part of the strategy this weekend. I mean, Vanderbilt was very smart with the way they went about doing it, talking all that trash during the week. Bryce Henderson, the main, you know, target of this whole thing, calling him whatever, and then he basically just baited him into getting that unsportsmanlike penalty just out of pure frustration. And that's the other thing. I think the frustration also stems from the fact that teams are going away from him. They're double teaming him. He's pissed off. He wants to make plays out there. But when he can't do anything about it, I mean, he's going to be frustrated. And so Clayton was talking about yesterday, like, you got to be like the bigger man in these sort of situations. Like, you can't let that all get to you. But we've seen it get to him a little bit so far this season.
Yeah, and obviously you want to have your best player on the field as much as possible for this upcoming weekend, and that's the unfortunate thing for South Carolina, is they could find themselves on the field quite a bit, because this is a Missouri offense that dominates time of possession. They're best in the SEC in total time of possession so far, averaging 38 minutes per game. They are third in the nation in plays per game with 89, but this isn't a situation like last week with it's kind of a similar situation last week with Vanderbilt, though, where they don't exactly have the highest tempo. They are 93rd in overall tempo with 28 seconds between plays. They're just so good at staying on the field, converting third downs, all those kind of things. It's really hard to end their drives and to stop them. Let's see, I pulled this number up yesterday. They've had 12 of their 35 drives so far this year go 10 plays or more. So you're talking about a team that can really wear down South Carolina's defense, which makes it that much more important that when Carolina does have the ball, they make the most of those opportunities.
They're going to have to. They have to make the most of these opportunities in the game. I mean, if they got to be playing well-rounded on both sides of the football. Like, you got to be better defensively. You can't give up 31 points in this game and expect to win. I think ideally you'd like to go at most maybe like 20, and I think that would be enough to – do you disagree?
I think that's probably fair. If you tell me that Carolina's defense can hold them between 20 and 24, I say you have a chance. If you're giving up 30, I haven't seen enough from the offense to think that that number is going to be able to happen.
No. And I mean, you said earlier, like the target goal probably for the offense has to be about 30 to win this game. I mean, if you're holding if the defense holds this team to 20 points, all you need to do is go out there and score 3 times and get into the end zone 3 times. I mean, that is something you should strive for in this game. Hopefully you get into the mid 20s, to be honest, maybe 24 to 28 points. And hopefully that'll be enough to win this game. But even if you lose this game, I do want to see South Carolina's offense go out there and actually show me something this week. Show me that you can be capable of making things happen, because you still have a lot of season left to go after this game.
If we go out there this weekend and Sellers is running all around the place and he's scrambling and doing all the things we saw a year ago and they still end up coming up short, obviously losing sucks, but I think people would be more in line of like, hey, at least you're doing more of what you did last year where you were successful. You're at least giving us what people have been asking for.
People will still be unhappy with the results if they don't win this game. But I think at the very least, you want to take some positives away from this game. Hopefully you are able to come out of there with the win. But you do want to be able to see that there is potential out there. And it's not just continuing to go downhill. Because, I mean, we're 4 games into the season now. Like, it is time to start figuring out, okay, what are you going to be offensively this year?
This is a rivalry game. In case you've forgotten, what are they playing for? We'll talk about that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you on your Thursday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's Howard and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. It's going to be a busy Saturday here on the Game and around here in the community. Gamecocks game day with myself and Elijah Campbell starts Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock for, of course, Saturday night's 7 o'clock kick with South Carolina and Missouri. We're going to have a viewing party with myself over at O'Hara's that night at 7 o'clock for the game. And then the early game, so Elijah and Preston going to be hanging out here in studio for an online viewing party, which you can watch on the Game TV radio on our YouTube channel from our brand new podcast studio just outside of our regular studio here. They'll be able to break the game down as it's happening in real time. So come hang out with those guys on the live stream coming up on Saturday. Jack, do you get fired up for rivalry games?
Oh, yeah. Why wouldn't you?
Do you get fired up for the Mayor's Cup?
No, I don't think I do, because it's not a true rivalry. It's one that was kind of just established by the SEC, and it's just coincidental that this is the Battle of Columbia, essentially.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when Missouri joined the conference, it was kind of like, and again, they were in the East together, so they had to play each other every single year. Somebody just kind of looked and said, hey, both these programs play in Columbia in their respective states. Let's make something out of that. And it's kind of a half-blanked type of rivalry, and the trophy also is pretty meh. It just looks like a generic cup type of trophy, which, hey, you obviously want to win it because that means you've won the most recent edition of the game. Did I tell you about my trophy rankings over the summer? Did I talk to you about that, or was that on a different show?
I don't think that was me, but I'm very interested to hear it, actually.
So this is just typical off-season type of stuff, but back in, I want to say it was June or July, I went through and ranked every single rivalry trophy in all of college football, the ones that are at least active as of right now, because there are some that haven't been played in several years. And believe my list includes 82 total trophies of all FBS rivalries in college football. And South Carolina has 3 of those with Palmetto Bowl, the Bonham Trophy with Carolina and A&M, and then, of course, the Mayor's Cup with Missouri. Out of 82 possible spots, where do you think the Mayor's Cup ranked on my list?
Probably towards the back half. I mean, it's a lame trophy, too. I would say probably like 75.
Close, 71.
Okay.
I had it just above the Apple Cup, which was also just kind of a similar generic kind of cup trophy for Washington State and Washington. And then below the Secretary's Trophy, not the Commanders-in-Chief Trophy, the Secretary's Trophy from Army and Navy.
The Secretary's Trophy. I've never heard of the Secretary's Trophy.
Yeah, I gotta jog my memory here, but it wasn't that spectacular. The Commanders-in-Chief Trophy is a lot cooler, but yeah, the Secretary's Trophy, just above South Carolina and Missouri's Mayor's Cup.
Let me ask you this: what are your favorite trophy games? Maybe not even games, but just what are your favorite trophies? And there's also a broader definition of trophies, because you look at you got Paul Bunyan's axe, you have the where is it, the keg of nails from Cincinnati, Louisville. I mean, there's a lot of different ones that are not just trophies necessarily.
So Paul Bunyan's axe was actually my number 2 on this list, but number 1 for me was the 5 Bits of Broken Chair trophy between Minnesota and Nebraska, if you're familiar with that.
That is a really good one. That is a good one. I've always loved the Fremont cannon from Nevada UNLV. Like, it's just a literal cannon on wheels, which is very, very interesting. I mean, some of these,
that was actually my number 5.
Some of the, like, you got the I've never seen this one. And you would know about this as a Georgia alum. The ore.
Yep, the Okefenokee ore.
How do you even pronounce it?
The Okefenokee ore. So you have the Okefenokee Swamp in South Georgia, and it's a lesser known part of the cocktail party. It's the war for the ore. And in the student center at Georgia, they have the oar on display when Georgia's holding it. So you go in the Tate Student Center in Georgia, there's this giant oar in a display case for when Georgia holds the lead or holds the victory over Florida for a given year.
You know what's another good one? I forgot about this one. The golden hat from Texas, Oklahoma.
It's a good one too. That was my number 12. Very underrated one that I didn't know about was the Bones, which is quite literally a bronzed rack of ribs from Memphis and UAB. That was my number 4.
What's your number 1? I don't think we've said the.
It was the 5 bits of broken chair. That was my number 1.
That's right. That's right.
But
where's the Commander in Chief's trophy?
That is a 3-way trophy. That was not included in my list. I only went with trophies that were between two individual teams because that goes to between the 3 service academies. That was not included. I will say Palmetto Bowl was 43, the Bonham Trophy was 46, and the Mayor's Cup was 71. So Carolina has 2 average trophies and one that I'm just not a fan of, that being the Mayor's Cup.
I still cannot believe they have a trophy for the freaking Bonham for the A&M game. That's just,
it is.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyways, coming up in hour number 2, we'll talk to Will Helms of Gamecock Central and get into a little bit of an analytics breakdown of what happened this past weekend against Vanderbilt and looking ahead to Missouri as well and what he has to say about Carolina's offense. It's all coming up in hour number 2 on your Thursday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Hour number 2. It is the now Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Feltry. I think Wes Mitchell will be along with us here in a moment. Still waiting for him to actually walk in the studio, though he is always fashionably
He's always late.
He's always late as always. That's okay. I was going to ask his thoughts on the Mayor's Cup Trophy since I just said it ranked 71st on my list of 82 rivalry trophies in college football. But we'll get those thoughts in a minute. We got our guy on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines joining us now who does analytics for Gamecock Central, that being Will Helms. Will, appreciate you taking your time this morning. How we doing, man?
Doing well. How are y'all?
Doing good. You have any thoughts on the Mayor's Cup Trophy ahead of this weekend? I put it pretty low on my list of overall rivalry trophies. I just think it's very unimaginative.
When I used to write for national college football, I was in a season when I was doing all these trophy and, rivalry, articles and things like that. And I remember writing about the Mayor's Trophy and going, this is one of the stupidest things out there. It's truly just hey, we need to make this team feel welcome in the SEC by giving them a rivalry trophy or two. They don't care about it. South Carolina doesn't care about it. It's just another trophy to have.
Yeah, rivalries should be built on more than just sharing the same city name in different states. We can do better than that. Regardless, we'll get into the Missouri analytics coming up in a minute, but I want to rewind back to this past weekend against Vanderbilt, and you've got a great breakdown on GamecockCentral.com for those that want to go over there and read it because, again, we've been talking about this offense and its struggles ad nauseum for the first couple weeks of the season, and you have some pretty specific numbers that point out, at least early in the game, they were being very successful, even though they only did have the 7 points on their opening drive.
Yeah, success rate is one of the most stable metrics, but it really doesn't tell the story of the game just because, all success is counted equal in success rate. You could run a 99-yard touchdown and it just counts as one successful play, or you could get 3 yards on 3rd and 2 and it counts as successful. And so success rate is really stable for seeing how an offense actually performs. But you see it takes one play, the nose tackle drops, and Lenora Sellers throws an interception. That's a 14-point swing. Success rate just counts that as one negative play out of 3 or 4 in the first quarter. That totally flips the game on its head. But South Carolina was being successful, in fact, as successful as we have data for in any particular quarter.
Hey, Will.
Hey, Will, it's
Jack.
Appreciate you joining us. You were talking about in your story, there's a bigger issue, analytically speaking, that really hurt South Carolina on offense, and that was points per scoring opportunity. I mean, we all know in that game they were unable to finish drives. And I'll ask you, from your perspective, what do you feel like went wrong in those drives, especially when Luke Doty was in there, that Carolina could just not finish on?
Yeah, I think part of it is South Carolina, going kind of back to that success rate, South Carolina has never been a super successful offense. They've never tried to be a super successful offense. If you want a successful offense, you're looking at your Vanderbilts of the world, you're looking at your Armies of the world, you're looking at your ball control offenses. South Carolina's never tried to be that. They've never wanted to be that. And I think part of it is eventually, if you're just getting 4 yards of play, 5 yards of play, 6 yards of play, something eventually is going to go wrong, especially with the backup quarterback in the game. And you see South Carolina, I said they lost the turnover battle 6-1. It doesn't show that way in the box score, but you have two turnovers on downs that really, really hurt them. You have a couple other places where, you make a mistake in the red zone, you make one mistake, and whether it's a holding call, a sack, an interception, something like that, that just kills the drive. And so going forward, I think you'll see South Carolina do a little bit better. But that is probably the biggest thing in football. You look at who was dead last in success rate last year. It was Florida State. They went 2-10. This year they're number one in points per scoring opportunity. This year they're number one. So it's something that can change week to week. And if you just kind of take those and you put both Vanderbilt and South Carolina at their averages, South Carolina wins the game. You can't do that. It's not how it works. But it does kind of illustrate that South Carolina wasn't just blown off the ball every play and just had no chance. It's really, they did fine, and then they got down to where it actually mattered and could not execute.
Hey, Will, it's Wes. Appreciate you hopping on, man. I know you don't cover Vanderbilt, but just bringing them up, I am very curious in general. The start of this year and last year, how, according to the metric side, how successful are they on offense? Because I know just eyeball test, it feels like they would be one of the better teams when you're measuring it that way.
Yeah, they've got one of the higher success rates. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It's definitely top like 2 or 3 in the SEC. Always has been. They're not super explosive, and you saw that last year in the game last year. They moved the ball well, but since they could not get the explosive plays, all it would take is a Dylan Stewart sack or a negative play or something like that. And as a offense predicated on success and not explosion, a sack, holding call, bad snap, something like that, really, really, really hurts the team, more so than a team like South Carolina. Ironically, South Carolina's offense is more built to work out of 3rd and 15 because half the time Lenora Sellers throws the ball, it goes 15 yards downfield, and he's an extremely successful deep passer, whereas Vanderbilt doesn't have that in their offense. The problem was South Carolina couldn't get stops on first down, and so when you're facing a successful offense and you're constantly in 2nd and 5, 3rd and 2, you're just not going to have a good day defensively.
Again, talking to Will Helms, who does analytics for Gamecock Central, taking a look back at what happened this past weekend. You pointed something out after the game, and the statistics back it up, that Carolina was doing a good job in the trenches early in the game, but after Sellers went out, you saw a clear shift in what was happening up front on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I deal with numbers, but it's hard to avoid the thought that South Carolina, at least for that middle part of the game, just did not look prepared for their quarterback to go down. That's understandable. We see that when starting quarterbacks go down, it is hard to rebound behind a backup. But South Carolina was really blowing Vanderbilt off the ball on both sides. Vanderbilt's first couple of touchdowns were a couple of really close, like, they just got a pitch off, or South Carolina was half a step slow, something like that, a lot of misdirection. It wasn't, we're going to line up and run the ball down your throats. That was not working. They were not running the ball well. They really weren't finding much success in just straight up drop back passing. It was more they were getting some misdirection. They were hitting South Carolina with a couple of plays that theoretically, if Lenora Sellers stays in the game, if the defense continues to play with that energy, they're not going to get hit with that all game. And then on the offensive side of the ball, yes, you had a couple of negative plays. People point out Lenora Sellers got hit. That hit was not the line couldn't block. It was a delayed blitz, which has happened in the past, and they don't get a hat on a hat there. But when South Carolina was just lining up and blocking, it was probably the best we've seen at any point under Beamer in terms of just lining up, blowing the defense off the ball, and moving the ball.
Going off that about the blocking in that first half, I thought the blocking was pretty solid at the start. But I'll ask you, for this being such a abysmal performance for South Carolina overall, when you look at the box score, what are the numbers that stick out to you that say, like, hey, like, there are some positives to potentially take away from a game like this?
Well, I think part of it is, if you look at the numbers, South Carolina's offense was, for most of the game, more successful than Vanderbilt's. They had more yards per play. They had more yards overall. It really was that no scoring opportunities, or not taking advantage of scoring opportunities, and then the explosion just kind of took a backseat with Luke Doty. Between the time that Luke Doty came in and the last 2 or 3 drives, which technically, analytically, really don't count because they're garbage time, South Carolina had no explosive plays. They would have had one on the first play with Luke Doty. We can get into that, and that's not an excuse. But they just weren't throwing the ball down the field. When they did throw the ball down the field, they were having success, but Doty only attempted 6 passes beyond 10 yards. He completed 4 of them, worked really well. But South Carolina went from, I think they had 8 explosive plays during the game. 5 of them came with Sellers in the game, and then 3 of them came in the last 2 drives. So that middle, like, second and third quarter, even if they're having success, if you're not taking advantage of your opportunities and you're not creating plays of 15, 20 yards down the field, you're just not going to be able to come back against a team that likes to control the ball, hold the ball on offense, limit possessions, all that kind of stuff. And so with Sellers in the game, you expect explosive plays. It's something that South Carolina creates well. It's something that Lenora Sellers is one of the best in the country at doing, both in the running game and the passing game. So if you're looking for positives, that's kind of what you're looking at. But with Doty in the game, it just looked too conservative. Even if they're going to get 4 or 5 yards of play, all it takes is 1 negative play, and now you've taken yourself out of a good drive.
Hey, Will, I know Beamer pushed back yesterday on this idea of like, hey, we're calling the same plays. We're not trying to limit Sellers in the running game. But I'm just curious, even like let's say teams are kind of forcing Sellers to hand off as opposed to keep on a zone read. If the raw numbers, regardless of what the play calls are, result in Sellers running the ball a little bit less as opposed to, some games last year where it was just clear like, hey, we're putting this game on 16 shoulders. What have your numbers, your analytics showed you over the last season plus in terms of the effect on the offense when Sellers' usage rate is kind of at its highest? Is it a huge difference from a number standpoint?
Yeah, and I think it's really funny that people are talking about Lenore Sellers not running the ball more, because I think the huge issue is he's not throwing the ball more. He's got his most dropbacks in the game is 26. That was against Virginia Tech. That would have been his least in a full game last season. So other than the 2 games where he went out injured, he had at least 27 dropbacks in every game. He's had 26 as his most, and he was on pace for about 20 against Vanderbilt. And so his scramble rate is about the same. Last year it was about 12%. This year it's about 11%. So he's scrambling just as much as he did last year. The called run rate for Sellers is about the same as far as I can tell. The issue is you can't scramble if you're not dropping back to pass. And Sellers has attempted 19 passes, and 17 passes this year. That's not good enough. He was the returning quarterback. He was the most accurate deep passer of all the returning quarterbacks in college football. This year, he doesn't qualify for the leaderboards because he hasn't thrown it deep enough to qualify. So you're talking about a guy who excels at throwing it deep, and he's attempted 4 deep passes all season. Half of them have gone for touchdowns. He's thrown almost half of his passing yards on those 4 passes, and he's just not pushing the ball down the field. He's not dropping back to pass. You can't scramble if you're not dropping back to pass. You can't throw the ball down the field if you're not dropping back to pass. And it's not like South Carolina's, traditional running game is working either. And so I think the biggest issue is just 4 passes. Let him drop back, put it on his shoulders, and let him decide, hey, this guy's open, let me throw it down the field, or this guy's not open, let me tuck it and run. I think that's your bigger issue rather than should we call more zone reads or should we call more, quarterback power or anything like that. I think it's more just keeping the ball in his hands and not handing it off.
He's Will Helms. He does analytics for Gamecock Central. He'll stay with us on the other side. We'll dive into the numbers of this weekend's matchup against Missouri. Up next is the Garnet Trust Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling Heating, rolls along on your Thursday here on The Game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Integrated Media. You've heard us tell you all about them before. 803-948-8327 or integratedmediainc.com is, of course, the website. They've been to my home. They've been to Chris Clark's home. Let them come to yours as well. They have a lot of great services that can just honestly upgrade the overall tech experience in your home. That could be as simple as like hanging that TV for you if you don't want to do it yourself, hiding the wires, getting that good, really professional look, or going kind of all in on a home theater system. You can run it off a tablet. You can really run your entire home off that tablet in terms of thermostat, your TV setup, the surround sound, and then you can even implement or integrate security and cameras as well. Have a really just nice overall home setup. That is what they specialize in, and they can take those dreams you have for all those things and turn it into a reality. Again, that is integratedmediainc.com, phone number 803-948-8327.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyra Ed, Wes Mitchell, and Jack Belcher hanging out with you on your Thursday, talking analytics with Gamecock Central analytics guru Will Helms, who's joining us on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Will, we turn our attention to this weekend's game against Missouri. You noted in your article yesterday, at the time, at least when you wrote it, that Carolina is about a 13.5-point underdog to Missouri heading in, which kind of matched the original number that when the line opened up earlier on in the week. We obviously have more intel that sellers might be available this weekend. The line for the game, according to ESPN Bet, has come down to 9.5. Do we know if that has shifted at all, and if so, by how much with the S&P Plus?
So with SP Plus, it tries not to put too much on injuries. It will shift a little bit based on that. But you've got to look at it both sides. So South Carolina as a whole is 13.5 points worse than Missouri on Missouri's field, according to SP Plus. You also have to remember that, we've talked about it before, that Lenora Sellers has only played about a game and a half so far this year. So there are numbers going into it without him on the field already, but it's not going to shift whether he's on the field or not based on the numbers. I would shift it in my head. I think that line coming down makes sense. I happened to get the line earlier at 13.5 this week, thinking that Sellers might play. That ended up being, a smart idea. But, the numbers won't change really on the analytics side based on that, but you have to remember that the numbers are based on South Carolina as a whole, whether Lenora Sellers has been playing or not been playing. So it's kind of a wash as it goes.
Here, obviously, again, they do come to this game 2 touchdown favorites and stuff initially, but that line, of course, like you guys have said, has moved down a little bit. I wanted to ask you about this offense and Beau Pribula. Obviously, Missouri has lost a lot of pieces from last year, having to replace quarterback, receivers, running back. But Pribula is interesting. I think he's probably the biggest challenge South Carolina is going to have so far this season. I think Diego Pavia is a great quarterback, but I think Pribula could be even better. What sticks out about him from an analytical standpoint?
Well, I think one thing we're talking about usage rate and all that kind of stuff. He's actually not used in the running game as much as you would think, only involved in 12% of their rushes, but he's had a couple of big explosive runs, which has really, really helped the offense. The main thing with Missouri is Missouri has not faced any sort of havoc this year at all. So Pribula is okay / a little bit below average with pressure in his face. He's just not facing a lot of pressure, and we don't really have a large sample size to know if that's just – I think he's attempted 6 passes under pressure this season, so we don't know if that's he's actually inaccurate when he faces pressure or just a kind of small sample size thing. And so if South Carolina can't get pushed, you'll see Missouri move the ball up and down the field like they have all season. I think it's safe to say South Carolina has the best front seven that Missouri has faced in a while, and that Pribula has probably ever faced in his career. It's more of a when they get to dictate the tempo, when they get to dictate how they do things, and when they stay successful, kind of like Vanderbilt, they are really tough to stop.
Will, speaking of them being tough to stop, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this. This outside zone, stretch zone that Drinkwitz sort of lives in, I feel like, it gives a lot of teams fits, but it certainly has given South Carolina fits over the years. It's more of a schematic thing, but is there anything we can kind of learn about Drinkwitz and their offense and their approach from the numbers? We had Gabe DeArmond on yesterday, who's covered them forever, and he's talking about, hey, this offensive-oriented guy comes in and everybody's like, oh, he's going to throw the ball around the yard, and then you realize, no, like a lot of what he does is all based around, can they get that movement up front? Do they get those cutback lanes up front, and can they establish this sort of outside zone approach in the rushing attack?
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you say offensive guy, you immediately go to air raid, but that's about as far as you could get schematically from what Missouri actually does, and it's all predicated off the run game. I think one thing you've got to give them credit for is the way that they've recruited to their strengths. They, unlike other teams, want a dominant back that they can hand the ball off to, as much as possible. Other teams are looking to, how do we use these guys a little bit more? How do we rotate backs and all that kind of stuff? But, Ahmad Hardy, even in the midst of blowouts this season, is involved in 41% overall of every rush. That includes, if he's, not involved, basically he is touching the ball on 41% of their rushing attempts. And so he's definitely a guy that they're going to have to stop. And it's another team where, unfortunately, South Carolina's had a lot of these this season. If you can't stop them on first and second down, they're going to get into 3rd and 1, 2nd and 4, those really nice offensive downs and distances. And it's going to be really hard to stay off the field for the defense. And so that's not really what you want when your offense has been, boom or bust on the explosion side. But South Carolina's going to have to get off the field, and they're going to have to figure out a way to stop this outside zone, which, as you said, they have not been very good at doing in the past.
And talking to Will Helms, does analytics for Gamecock Central on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines, and you pointed out in your article as well, Coach Beamer has a pretty good reputation coming off losses, and we talked about this earlier on in the week that, sometimes when we doubt these kind of teams the most, they come out there and really surprise us. And most recent example of that, I know they didn't win the game last year, but playing a really spirited game against Alabama on the road after getting obliterated by Ole Miss here at home. And we're obviously hoping for something similar, obviously with a win at the end result this time. But for whatever reason, these Beamer teams, when you see probably their worst performance, they typically come out and look a lot better the next time on the field.
Yeah, it's really interesting that and we can argue what an in-game adjustment is and how often those happen, but Beamer simultaneously kind of has this reputation for they're just a dud or two every season. You talk about the Ole Miss game, you talk about the Florida game a couple of years ago. There are games where the team has just come out flat, has not worked well, or faces some sort of adversity in the game and kind of melts. I think we kind of saw that last week. I truly think South Carolina would have won that game with Lenora Sellers healthy. As soon as he gets hurt, it's not that Luke Doty played bad. It's not the offense played bad. It's simply that the energy dropped. Both the offense and defense started to, kind of melt back. But then at the same time, he's got this kind of reputation for his teams really know how to, turn it around with their backs against the wall. I mean, Shane Beamer leads all coaches in college football with wins as a 14-point underdog since he got to South Carolina in 2021. I think they're 3rd or 4th nationally in their record, both straight up and against the spread after a loss. And he overperforms expectations pretty consistently after a team has lost, especially after one of those pretty bad losses that kind of makes you start counting the team out. So with Sellers in there, I think South Carolina has a chance to win every single game this season. I think it's interesting because let's say they do win this season, I think the rest of the schedule looks pretty favorable. There are a lot of teams that looked really good that don't necessarily look as good as we thought. There's LSU on the schedule that seems to be struggling a little bit. Clemson obviously is not looking as good. Even Ole Miss to an extent, that defense just does not look great. And so it's one of those things that if they can, with their backs against the wall again, put up a really good performance and maybe even come out with a win this year, you go and you look next week. We're sitting here on Thursday talking about, well, college football playoff doesn't look like that far away. Whereas right now we're sitting here going, can they even make a bowl game? And so I think it's really interesting when covering Beamer that that is something that they do. I'm sure it's frustrating for South Carolina fans. But you kind of have to step back and say, okay, this guy really does perform well with his back against the wall.
Will, I noticed in your score, we got about 2 minutes left, by the way, here. You got in your score prediction here at the end of your story, 26-24, Missouri wins this game. I'll ask you simply, just how do you ultimately see this one playing out with Missouri winning?
Yeah, I think you're going to see more limited possession. South Carolina, we thought the beginning of the schedule was easy, and maybe it is easier than the back of the schedule. But they're stacked with a bunch of similar ball control, start with the run, play action off of that kind of teams. So South Carolina has not had a lot of possessions this year. They have not faced a lot of teams that run up and down the field, and so that can be good, that can be bad. I think for South Carolina to win, they're going to have to get off the field, and they're going to have to make the most of those scoring opportunities. One thing really quickly is, as bad as South Carolina has been in points per scoring opportunity, Missouri is like top 3 in the country. They're averaging 5.5 points per scoring opportunity, and they've gotten down there a lot. And so, you're talking about if South Carolina can force a couple field goals, this will be close. I don't think, they'll get blown out, but if it's one of those things where Purdue's legs really take over down in the red zone, they can't stop this outside zone, they can't control the ball, they can't stay off the field defensively, then you're going to see Missouri kind of start to run it up at the end. But I do think that South Carolina can keep it close. I really do think they could win this one. But obviously things are going to have to get better, and they're going to have to return to the mean on a couple of things they did well last year that they're not doing well this year.
Well, man, great stuff as always. We appreciate it, and hopefully your score prediction is wrong for this weekend, and we have a win to talk about next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Always enjoy it, guys.
Absolutely. He's Will Helms doing analytics for Gamecock Central. We'll continue on with the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating as your Thursday rolls along here on the game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends at Krantz Cooling. Told you about them earlier this week. Unfortunately, not that I don't love our guys at Krantz, but unfortunately I had to give them a call this past week because we had an issue. And I said, well, obviously, I know who I'm going to call. Our friends at Krantz Cooling. That's Krantz with a K, coolingwithak.com. Also, do what I did. Call them at 803-672-3224. They're going to come out like they did for us and get you taken care of. Nobody likes that feeling when you look at the thermostat and you see that it's just hotter in the house than it's supposed to be, and you just have that sinking feeling. You know that you're going to have to make that phone call, but you can make this call knowing you're going to be taken care of, that they're going to work with you on cost. They're going to work with you every step of the way on knowing exactly what's going on with your unit, and they're going to get it fixed up to where you got that cool air blowing once again. So do what I did. Call them 803-672-3224.
Welcome back in. It is the Garden Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Ed, Jack Belcher, Wes Mitchell hanging out with you on your Thursday here on the game. It's a very busy Thursday. Coming up today from 3 until 6. Post-game show is going to be hanging out at Old Mill Brew Pub on East Main Street out in Lexington. Then tonight, of course, at 7 o'clock, we have Carolina Calls with Coach Beamer and Todd Ellis, as you'll hear Beamer's final thoughts ahead of the Missouri game coming up on Saturday. And right after that, rolls into Thursday night football with Jack's beloved Bills taking on the hapless Dolphins. Is that fair to say? You feel pretty good about the Bills' chances tonight, Jack?
Yes. I feel good enough to where I'm actually going out to dinner with the girlfriend tonight during the game. So I feel
whoa,
confident.
Jack, whoa.
Whoa. What do you mean, whoa?
You know what I mean. What I mean, are we this desperate for brownie points that we're taking our girl out during the game?
Look, I'll be. Like, I don't even know what time we're going out yet, but I will be back in time to watch most of this game. Shoot, I'll probably have the game on my phone if I really need to. But I feel confident enough to where the Bills are going to win this game, and I won't have to break much of a sweat. I'll be able to get back to my place at halftime and watch the game. It'll be fine.
Watch them be down 21-3 at halftime, and
I was about to say,
Jack's
save that clip.
Then we're never going on another date like this on Thursday again. Then when the Bills are playing.
Now, was she aware that they were playing on Thursday when she made these plans?
Oh yeah. Well, I talked to her about the plans. We were originally going to go see a movie, but then I'm like, let's go to dinner because I'm back home, about to fly out to Missouri tomorrow, and
okay.
I'm like, all right, we haven't seen each other in a few weeks. Let's go out to dinner. Let's go get something, and then yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna try to book this after we're done on the show here, but we'll see. Hopefully, I can get it before the game starts.
Okay. Well, I'll try not to bug you in the first half at least, in case things are going sideways.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have this discussion tomorrow on the follow up.
Yes.
If the game went well or bad.
I like your chances when the other team's having players only meetings a week into the season. That's typically a pretty bad sign.
And it's in Buffalo, so we know how the Dolphins just don't play well when it's not 80 degrees in Florida.
How cold is it in Buffalo? It can't be that cold.
It's not gonna. It's probably in like the 70s, maybe even the 60s. I mean, it's an 8 o'clock game tonight, right? So I mean, I can't imagine it's. Let's see what the weather in Buffalo is. But point is, I mean, it's not going to be anything like they would in December. It's going to be about 69 degrees at kickoff around 8 o'clock.
Nice.
So
not bad.
So hopefully that's not too cold for the Dolphins.
We'll see what happens there. Get back into college football now. I thought this was interesting. We're, again, only 3 weeks into the season. A lot of teams have not, played quality competition each and every week. So this is still a long way to go before this is decided. But I do think it's interesting, and I think it speaks volumes to how wide open this year of college football seems. When you look at the updated Heisman odds and how much things have shifted in just the first couple weeks of the season, obviously here locally, Lenore Sellers' odds have fallen quite a bit. He went from plus 1,400 to start, now down to plus 5,000. Obviously, being injured for half the game last week didn't help that case out either. But you look at a lot of guys that we thought were towards the top of that list, Manning being the favorite coming into the year, guys like DJ Lagway that were hot and popular names coming into the year, and they've fallen quite a bit. And now you got guys like John Mateer and Carson Beck kind of leading the way in terms of Heisman odds as we approach the end of the first month of the season.
I mean, guys, when you look at this thing right now, first of all, how did even like the national guys, the guys that have access to film that some of us will never see, get it so wrong on Arch Manning to this point? Like I understand he was highly recruited out of high school, and the college or the rankings will prove over time. Like when it comes to quarterbacks, any given year, man, you can take like the top 10 quarterbacks out of high school and kind of look back on them like 3 or 4 years into their career, and like 50% of them will have not even made an impact. Like that's just the way the quarterback position is. It is incredibly hard to evaluate. But man, you're talking about a guy who did play last year. You're talking about I know he didn't start, but he was on the field. You're talking about a guy who has been in college for a few years now. You're talking about a guy who, you're hearing from practice what's going on at Texas. If you're a national, you're probably watching some of these practices or getting film. I mean, can he turn this thing around, or is he just not who we thought he was? Like, I'm just struggling with how far off those guys were on this. And then you do have a lot of other guys, to your point, Tyler, that just for whatever reason it may be, do not have the stats right now that you would expect. And dude, then you look at Carson Beck, and I'm going, we all kind of buried him last year.
Sure.
He is as good, probably better than anybody in the country at that position at doing some of the things that I'd put Nussmeier in this category too. The things that the NFL guys like really look for in terms of operating in the pocket, keeping your eyes downfield when there's havoc around you. And, in terms of understanding the scheme there, setting protections, all those different things. Now, he'll still throw a couple balls into traffic where you're going, what is my man seeing?
Yep.
So will Nussmeier, for that matter. But, I mean, has he climbed back into the top round conversation? It really felt like he fell off in terms of those conversations last year.
Yeah, I would say probably so, because he went into last season, 2024, as being one of the Heisman favorites, being thought of as a first-round draft pick, and we know the disaster of a season he had at Georgia, and maybe that was overcompensating for not having the receiving help, and the guys that were around him were dropping balls left and right, so maybe he was trying to force the issue. But, yeah, he's been pretty great so far this year at Miami. And, again, he was coming off the injury that ended his season early last year in the SEC Championship. I think a lot of people were rightfully skeptical, but through 3 games so far, and 2 of those games being against a Notre Dame team that looks to be pretty good, and a South Florida team that had 2 of the best wins to start the season so far, he's looked pretty good. And, he might be well on his way to maybe finding his way to the Heisman Trophy stage come December.
But you also have John Mateer, who is leading the Heisman odds right now, and I'm a little surprised by that, because I think Carson Beck has, quite frankly, been better. I think the only metric you look at with Mateer where he's really been better is the yardage. I mean, he's almost up to 1,000 yards passing this year, but he's got 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, QBR of 77.5. You look at Carson Beck's numbers, I mean, 812 yards. It's not like he's that far behind pace right now. We can also argue he's played better opponents to start the season. 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, almost a 90 QBR, 4th best in college football right now. I mean, look, if I'm looking at these odds right now, I'm probably riding with Carson Beck. It's a 3-game sample size, but at the same time, it's like, we know what Carson Beck can be. He can be very good. Last year was not the type of season I think we expected out of him, but he's still a very good quarterback overall. And then as far as these other guys go, I think this is going to be a 2-man race between Beck and Mateer right now. But it would not shock me at all if Garrett Nussmeier starts picking it up a little bit. I mean, 689 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Keep in mind, LSU went to Clemson. They played Florida, played Louisiana Tech. I know they got another gimme kind of game this week. But I think as SEC play gets rolling here, we're going to see why – Nussmeier is so highly thought of and all that stuff. And I think we will probably still see Nussmeier have a great season.
Well, and how many times in years past, and we'll talk about it when the calendar finally flips, but the guy that we look at in the first month of the season saying, wow, he's the favorite right now and he's looking the best out of all these guys. That guy doesn't always end up being the one that holds the trophy coming up in December. It's a long season. Of course, everybody's going to be really getting into conference play here in these next couple weeks to where you're seeing more quality opponents on a week-in, week-out basis where maybe some of these stats kind of even out a little bit, or even somebody like Garrett Nussmeier does kind of step up to that next level because, again, he's been okay, but you wouldn't say he's been phenomenal through these first couple weeks of the season so far. And, again, we're only, a quarter of the way through it for most teams as of right now, and it's going to be a long way to go. But, again, even in just a couple of weeks, our expectations and thoughts have shifted quite a bit from where they were when the season started.
Yeah, and I would say, Tyler, to your point there, too, doesn't it seem like, sometimes guys will have a season where they just put up big numbers every single week, but a lot of times you're going to have, like, those games that people can't help but take notice of. Like, if you're going to put up a big statistical season, it's going to come with you throw 4 touchdowns and 375 in a game or two. Like, you just completely skew the numbers in your direction. And but I do think the floor is open, though, for some other guys to get heavily into this conversation right now once we get into conference play and, this college football playoff spots are starting to sort of the early parts of them being decided.
Going to be a fun race to watch as the season goes along. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. Scary situation yesterday for former Gamecock quarterback Connor Shaw. We'll give the latest on what we know about that as we wrap up hour number 2. It is the Garnet Trust Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating, along with you on your Thursday on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyrad, Jack Veltri, and Wes Mitchell hanging out with you on your Thursday here on the game. If you haven't been on social media or anything in the past 12 hours or so, maybe you haven't heard the news, but former Gamecock quarterback Connor Shaw, involved in a terrifying situation last night, was attending his son's football game out in Simpsonville, apparently collapsed on the field, had to be rushed to the hospital, where the latest update per the state newspaper is that he is in ICU at Prisma Health Greenville Memorial Hospital. Don't have any updates on his condition, but obviously scary situation there. Don't know what went down or what the outlook is as of right now, but obviously being taken care of down there in Greenville, and thoughts and prayers and hoping for the best, obviously.
Yeah, guys. Like you said, I mean, don't want to speculate too much or spread anything else on what's out there, but just want to say, man, like, pulling for you, Connor, praying for you. I know for his family that had to be just terrifying. Obviously, they were all right there, and also from what we heard in terms of how it went down. Just want to say what an amazing job for those who responded there to Connor. When this, I guess, medical event, you would say, happened. Sounds like there were some real heroes on the field last night, and we could be having a different story if they were not there. So amazing job, people stepping in when a moment had to just be, again, very, very scary. But thoughts to Connor's friends, family, everybody there. And, man, that guy, I've known Connor a long time, probably one of the toughest I have ever seen put on a South Carolina uniform. So we know he's a fighter. That's a cliche a lot of times, but he is genuinely a fighter. So definitely pulling for you, Connor.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Wes. I mean, you said it perfectly right there. It's a scary situation, right? I mean, like, it's crazy that this stuff happens, and it's life is very short. It feels like it's long, but it's definitely short. And Connor's a young guy. I mean, he's only 33, so hoping for the best. Hopefully, he's able to pull this one out. And I've gotten a chance to talk to him for a story once and chat with him a few times. Super, super nice guy, and definitely. You could see, I mean, the guy was a winner when he was here at South Carolina, and definitely, like you said, Wes, definitely a fighter. So hopefully he's able to pull this one out and get back to full health here pretty soon.
We'll stay on top of that all day long and provide any updates as they do become available. A scary situation not too long ago before the season started, also involving Traven Robertson, who, of course, is South Carolina's defensive line coach, and we did get some positive news yesterday. There was a statement put out by him in reference to everything that's happened over the past couple of weeks. We did get a picture of him attending practice, I believe, from yesterday or earlier on this week. Does look like he's in a wheelchair, has a walker with him, so still obviously banged up from the scary head-on collision that he was involved in, but obviously great to see that he's at least back at the facility in some capacity. And obviously Clayton White, Coach Beamer, they all talked about it this week, how good it was for him and the players to see him back out there again.
Yeah, and, man, I would say as bad as that situation was, and it was, I'm sure, horrifying. Could have been the worst, honestly, there. So, I also want to say to, I believe, I'm trying to find it while we're on air. I believe it was the Dutch Fork Fire Department was the first responders. I hope I'm getting that right, but I again want to say what an amazing job by those folks who were there and got him out of the vehicle and got him to care as quickly as possible because, it was a life-altering situation for Travian, but there's actually a picture floating around of him with the fire department as well. Gamecock hat on, all smiles, which, I'm sure this has been a really tough couple weeks and probably some more tough times to come in terms of his recovery, but he is alive, he is well, and that is a blessing and is probably because of the great people that were there to work on him as well.
Yeah, and 5 surgeries for Travian, so it's definitely a scary situation. And Shane was talking about earlier this week. He was out at the parking lot after practice, and all the players came out and talked to him and stuff. And then obviously yesterday, the photos posted that he's up in one of the towers there at the practice facility and with the headset on, in the wheelchair. Obviously, got the little walker too. So don't know what that means moving forward in terms of, I doubt he would be there this weekend. Obviously, doesn't seem like that's going to be the case, but hopefully he's able to be back with the team soon. And you wish him just a speedy recovery, because it's an awful situation what happened there with him.
Yeah, so positive momentum there for Traven Robertson. We'll keep you updated on Connor Shaw as things come available, hopefully throughout the rest of the day. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, getting back into the latest on Lenore Sellers as your Thursday rolls along here on the game.
All right, folks, let me tell you about our friends at Classic Roofing, classicroofingsc.com, or 803-590-7870. Our friends at Classic, they've been at my home. We went full roof replacement. They could do the same for you, or, maybe it's not that drastic. Maybe you hit them up here at classicroofingsc.com. You hit the free estimate button. You go ahead and set something up and let them come out to your home. Again, free estimate. They're going to let you know, one, hey, if you're ready to do a full roof replacement, what does that look like for you? But more importantly, are there any kind of smaller issues you can go ahead and take care of now to maybe prevent problems later on? How much life do I have left on this roof? If you own a business as well, of course, kind of planning for those big capital expenditures can be a big part of your financial planning. So let them help you with that like they did me. Again, 803-590-7870.
11 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris along with you here on the game, getting set for the weekend ahead. Obviously, another loaded weekend of college and pro football. Our focus, of course, is on South Carolina making its first true road trip of the season. Tacoma, a place that's, well, not treated them well over the years, as questions still surround the status of LaNorris Sellers, though last night we did get our first availability report of the week, and he was listed in the questionable category, which is kind of what we expected, which does give you belief. And according to Pete Thamel of ESPN, he was at least practicing earlier on this week as well. Gives you a lot more belief in him taking the field this weekend against Missouri.
Well, I believe the definition of questionable is officially 50%.
Yep.
So
Flip a coin.
Flip a coin. Now, Pete Thamel reporting, hey, there's some optimism here that he'll play. That's what Beamer said on Sunday night. I guess that was 2 years ago in injury terms, but the I think that's been the vibe here locally as well. Is kind of the same that Pete said there. Obviously, you're going to continue to monitor this thing and see what happens and see how he feels today. See how he feels on game day as well, but certainly does seem like there's some optimism that 16 will be able to play. And guys, they need him. I mean, he is your superstar for a reason. He is your QB1 for a reason. You know, Chris, I even feel like, so right after the game, a couple of days after the game, all the emotions are still running high in the fan base in terms of what they saw and the losing by 24 and all those things. I feel like as those emotions have come down, more and more people have kind of started to be like, man, the offense was actually looking the best it had all year to start this game under Sellers or with Sellers on the field. Wonder what would have happened if he could have finished the game and kind of this thought of, hey, if you're going to go win at Missouri, which I hesitate to say it is one of the toughest places to play in terms of atmosphere, but in terms of just going up there and winning, it has been tough for South Carolina to do that. Like it's a weird place. You've been, right?
Yeah, it's weird.
It's strange, man. It's like
I wanted to say it has a. I don't think I haven't been to a Big 12 stadium. Obviously, Missouri had their history but like if I had to guess of what it's like, it's kind of
how
like
you
that.
envisioned.
That's how I envisioned it.
What specifically
have you been,
makes
Tyler?
it feel that way? I have not. What makes it feel that way?
It was the 2013 game, and so obviously both teams are really good that year. So I imagine that was one of the more keyed up atmospheres. It was a night game. It's a little smaller. It's a little, Missouri has football history. It's not like we're talking about,
Sure.
Gosh, I hesitate to pile on Vandy. They just won by 24. Right, but it's not that type of atmosphere where there's no tailgating and the stadium's small, and things like that.
It did hit me, by the way, this week that Vandy can't be our punching bag for every.
Although weird flex by them, but I promise I'll get back on. Vandy tweeted out a picture up in the corner. Their football account did when they were after the game was in hand, and they're like, "Is this the sold out atmosphere we heard?" It's like, well, you saw at the beginning of the game, and there were still more people there than your biggest crowd. They had 35,000 people in their home opener.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna flex on the win all you want, but let's not talk about the stadium atmosphere.
They're new to this. They
don't know what to do with
They got to
themselves.
figure out how to flex on people.
In a strange way, guys, and I don't know, nobody should take solace in this at all, but the fact that Vanderbilt was going back out on your field and taking pictures and stuff,
Super Bowl?
You're just used to, hey, South Carolina beats Alabama, you're celebrating that day, you've won the Super Bowl. The fact that Vanderbilt is, how old was Pop? I know he's an older guy, but how old was he the last time you beat Vandy? You know what I'm saying?
He was still 15.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Most of their guys.
I think he would have actually been 7 or 8. But
Most of their guys were in diapers when that happened. They didn't know what a football was yet. So, there was some just the fact that South Carolina getting beat was that big a deal to another SEC school. Maybe says a little bit about the program and how it's come in terms of the last 2 decades. Like I said, I was in college the last time it happened, but there is kind of it's not as bad as Vandy's home field because it does get loud at Missouri, and I think they do tailgate, which they don't at Vanderbilt. They just hang out at a hotel. But even just the fact that the end zone, like I always look at a stadium, do you have an end zone with people in it?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you have some different structure there?
Aren't they building something in one of the end zones? I feel like I saw that on the Kansas game.
They are.
They're
They've got the whole, hey, we're doing construction right now thing going on.
Yeah.
Is that the end that used to have the Rock M in it?
That's still there, right?
Or that's on the other end?
I don't even know.
But you can sit on the
familiar
rocks if you want.
Can you rub the rock?
I don't know if you can. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so sorry, I got us off the rails, but like
It's turf too.
It's turf. Like it's a little weird, and I can't really point to a reason why it's been a difficult place to play, other than here's one. I mean, they've had a lot of good teams, and this team. We talked to Gabe DeArmond from Power Mizzou yesterday. He thinks that Bo Pribula is best quarterback since Drew Lock. I mean,
that was a sentence to
Brady
me.
Cook did things. I mean, he went a couple years ago. He went 15 for 15 and just moved the chains against Carolina. We saw what he did last year, and then they lost some guys. But like when you watch this team, go up and down the star power feature I did on Gamecock Central, where you're kind of looking at recruiting rankings.
Shameless plug.
They've got talent, and then the guys that maybe weren't as highly ranked are like Ahmad Hardy, who's leading the country in missed tackles and yards after contact. So they've done a really good job of like acquiring high school talent, portal talent, like evaluations. So this is all in addition to just being an SEC road game. That's tough. It's tough enough. You're also going and playing a team that's, I think, playing really good ball right now. So it's a challenge. And for South Carolina, a lot of the things that you're trying to, you've got to go improve and just not beat yourself. You've got to do those things in the context of trying to go do it against Missouri, too.
So they're building, while not into the stadium where the Rock M is, right now it's just kind of like a walking flat area. They're going to build stands above the grassy area, and it looks like kind of some suites up there. So they're building.
That's like what Vandy did, actually.
Yeah, they're building above where the Rock M is on that other side of the stadium is what it looks like, according to the renovation or the renderings they had put out a while back.
Yeah, Vandy's upgrades actually do look really nice. Hopefully there'll be people in them soon. But here's the thing. It got me thinking, Chris, when you said why has it been so tough to play there?
Yeah,
I think some of it is, man. These Missouri teams, and even even before Drink got there, they run the ball well. Like they've had really productive running backs of varying talent levels, but just productive. And how many of those South Carolina teams kind of just struggle to stop the run? And you look at this is an offensive scheme that I think amplifies your struggles if you struggle to stop the run. And you always hear people talk about, does an offense have an identity? Missouri's does. Like they know who they are, and they're not pretending to be anything different. It was actually kind of funny to me though to hear Gabe say hey, last year the offense just wasn't very good. The perception I feel like from Gamecock fan base is, hey, Drinkwitz, we want to punch him in the face, but he does a pretty good job. And so it is always funny to hear the difference in the perception from the people that have to watch a team every single week and the perception of people from the outside, what you've seen watching that team play your team. And but man, they just give you fits in terms of the running game and that outside zone play, and they're going to major in it, and they're not going to give up on it even if you stop it early on. And Chris, we had Will Helms on earlier. I thought he had a good point, man. It is going to be back-to-back weeks where you're going to face a team that is going to just get into 3rd and 3s and 3rd and 2s, and then you're going to have to deal with, are they going to hand it off here? Are they going to go play action here? Are they going to go misdirection here? And they're going to be one missed tackle away from, moving the chains or more.
Well, and that's the problem too. So they've got 2 backs who are really good. Ahmad Hardy, I just said, leading the country in
Stud.
in forced missed tackles, yards after contact. He's got more yards after contact than a lot of teams have rushing.
330 of his 462.
His
are after
462 rushing yards in 3 games. Now, a couple of the teams they played, and even in none of those teams are really good defensively.
He
right?
still
I don't
ran
think
for over
it's
100 every game.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. So, but to your point, Wes, that has been, if you could point to one thing, and I think Beamer outlined this before last year's game, that is not being able to stop the run against Missouri, and a lot of times not being able to run the ball against them. But you go back and look at the numbers from the last few years. So the Drink Beamer era of this series, last year Nate Noel only back to go over 150 individually against South Carolina's defense. Good defense, still put up 150. 2023, Cody Schrader, the Truman State transfer, he put up 159 by himself. 2022, he only, quote-unquote, had 81, but Missouri still had 140 rushing yards as a team. And in 2021, Tyler Beatty had 209 yards by himself. It's hard to win games that way.
Well, and I look at this past weekend of what happened against Vanderbilt, and Clayton White talked about it yesterday with, the missed tackles and stuff like that when they were getting to the outside, on those option type of plays, and that's where South Carolina struggled the most. And again, the MO of Missouri is to run outside the tackles and get you out in space, and Carolina's going to have to show a tremendous improvement from one week to the other, or else they're going to get run over again by this Missouri rushing attack on Saturday.
Yeah, and it forces you to be so good up front, man. Like I had a brief conversation, I guess that was yesterday, with a former Gamecock, and I was just like, man, what is it about this scheme that makes it so difficult? And he said, first and foremost, lots of pressure on your ends. Like your defensive ends have got to sort of set that point of attack on the outside and not let them just have that easy access to the perimeter. That's first things first. Then, if you do that, then it kind of falls to the rest of the guys in your front, though. Even if you kind of handle business on the edge, did your defensive tackles win their battle? Did your linebackers maintain gap integrity? And those are kind of cliched things that get thrown around when you don't stop the run very well, but they are very real things in terms of those little just one-on-one battles that are going on. That's the beauty of football. You've got 11 one-on-one battles going on potentially on every given play, and it may be designed to be outside run to the right, but there's so much freedom to these backs to cut it back and cut it against the grain. And so even if the first guy or two does their job, if the defensive tackles get mauled, that opens up things on the backside. If the linebacker outruns things to the outside or tries to really take up for and kind of fill in for an edge guy who does not set the edge, then all of a sudden all those cutback lanes are open. And the thing about Drinkwitz, he is going to yo-yo you to death. Like, he is going to throw the quick game to the outside. He's going to throw the perimeter screens. He's going to go play action off of it. They have an identity, and they will stick with it.
We'll take a look at what happened last year when these two teams faced off in Williams-Brice Stadium coming up next as we rewind on your Thursday on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
2nd down and 3. 22 seconds remaining, 2 timeouts. Blitz by Missouri. Shuffle pass inside Sanders. Inside the 10, 5. Rocket going for it. Touchdown Carolina. Touchdown Rocket Sanders. From 15 yards out. The Gamecocks win it.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, hell no, we just scored.
Oh my gosh. Shuffle pass.
Woo!
Listen to this crowd.
Welcome back in. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris with you on your Thursday here on the game. That was the call last year in the final moments as Rocket Sanders takes the screen in for the score to put South Carolina ahead 34-30. And by the way, one of the best calls you'll hear from Todd and Tommy ever with their excitement of launching Rocket Sanders there in those final seconds as Carolina was able to complete the comeback after it seemed like Brady Cook and Luther Burden III had just broken their hearts only moments before with the touchdown to put Missouri ahead 30-27. Great drive down the field to be able to pick up that victory as Carolina continued its winning streak there at the end of the season.
Yeah, what a moment there, man. And, you know, we used to talk about the Spencer Rattler go-off game. Like, when is that going to happen? And, hey, you can always have the Spencer Rattler go-off game, and it changes the entire dynamic. You know, we've seen the Lenora Sellers go-off games before, too. And, you know, I think that is valid to talk about in terms of this game as well. He is a guy who, in my opinion, elevates his play when the pressure is at its peak. And, you know, that game, yeah, it came down to that one play was the kind of, I guess, hallmark moment of that game. But there was a lot of big plays from the South Carolina offense leading up to that one. Really, you had 2 game-winning drives orchestrated by Lenora Sellers in that game because they're behind, they drive down, they score. You think, okay, they've won this game. Missouri answers, they drive down, they score, convert the 4th down. You could hear a pin drop in that stadium at the time. And then Sellers comes out, you know, hits a couple big plays, makes a couple beautiful throws, and then probably, you know, Dow had quite a few, I thought, really good calls and key moments last year, but that was one of the better ones, just going to that play there. It was a low-risk play, but a potentially high-impact play, and you saw Rocket probably have his just most memorable moment as a Gamecock, and there was nobody stopping him at that time. And it was it the loudest moment in Williams-Brice Stadium last year? Some people would say yes. I think there's a few other ones that were probably in the conversation, but it was certainly up there, man.
I think it was. Yeah, it was just an explosion of noise. Yeah, I think it probably was. And I mean, man, that was one of those where you go from riding the high of, you know, if you're a Carolina fan, we're going to win this game. We're going to win this game finally against Missouri. And then, oh, no, Missouri's going to do it again. You know, we've seen that in some instances during the course of this series where they, you know, dating back to the Spurrier era when, you know, they come back and break your heart at the end, but the Gamecocks are able to get it done. I mean, just huge play after huge play. And other, you know, Rocket Sanders deserves credit. Brady Hunt, Delvon Campbell. You know, there were just some huge plays in that game. You know, Jared Brown had a big play, touchdown earlier in the game. But Sellers was Sellers in that game, you know, and there was a stretch. I was looking at this yesterday because I was doing a lot of research and back and forth trying to look at the run game more specifically and how Sellers was used last year, how it relates to the very small sample size that we have this year when he's been on the field. And you're exactly right, Wes. Like, when he was needed the most and when the competition got the most significant in the middle part of the season and the end, you may say, well, why are you not bringing up the beginning? Because he made some big plays in the first half of the season, but he was still growing, and you saw that growth throughout the course of the year. Look, later in the year, Carolina's calling more called runs for him. He's scrambling more, making some huge plays. I mean, think about that Missouri game. He's just shrugging guys off. The A&M game, the Clemson game, of course, breaking all those tackles. But the staff's calling runs for him. He's making some big throws. Like, he really, really elevated his game. And I think that's why you at least have to consider in the Vandy games, as poor as the offense performed, if he's around beyond a quarter and, less than a half, let's just call it less than a half, does it look different? Well, maybe. You could make a compelling case either way, but you'd much rather have him on the field because of what he can do. And so assuming he can go Saturday, he's going to be a huge part of the game plan.
Yeah. By the way, last year, 353 yards through the air, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick, by far his best game passing-wise of his, career so far. And getting back to the point about him playing this upcoming weekend, you do wonder, though, given the fact that it was concussion and, you can play even if you're not, 100% from those things, you do also wonder, are they going to try and not let him get hit as much? Because you do have an injury that could, compile. Obviously, we've seen the NFL guys like Tua, once you have one concussion, you're more susceptible to others. So is that part of the game plan to maybe make it where he's not getting hit as much? Not saying he can't run the ball, but maybe being smarter a little bit in terms of where he runs and when he runs to make sure that you're not opening yourself up to getting injured once again 1 week after having a concussion.
Yeah, and were there other issues that they were checking him for as well? Like, we have not been given the full extent of exactly what all they tested him for. So, was it just the hit to the head that they're dealing with, or was it other things? So I think all those things are going to play into your game plan a little bit. You have to – you're probably going to have to show that he will run the ball to an extent. I think you maybe have to try to establish that early, and then you potentially maybe try to manage it, I guess, but not telegraph it that he's not going to be running as much. And then I think it's just something he has done a pretty good job of this year when he has scrambled, has been to get out of bounds or to get down. And then when it's one-on-one, though, here's the thing. Can you get injured? Yes, of course you can. But as we saw, a lot of times when you are the guy and you're as big as Sellers is, when you're the guy delivering the hit, it feels like your chances of getting injured are smaller than when you're standing in the pocket and you are getting hit, when you have no momentum on your side. So, I think how does that factor into how you use him in terms of letting him go run and just the decisions he makes in the open field? Maybe he's a little bit more careful about just getting down. But again, I think he's done that. Small sample size, but he's done that so far this year.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And obviously keep an eye on the injury or the availability report as the week goes along and what his status is going into Saturday. Regardless of whether he plays or not, you're going to need guys on the offense around him or Luke Doty to step up. We'll get into a Make Your Case coming up next of who is the most important one on Saturday. That's coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris along with you on your Thursday here on the game. Reminder, again, the Loyola Lisa Special Teams Contest is back. Go online to 1075thegame.com and register if you've not already. If the Gamecocks can get a special team score coming up on Saturday against Missouri, you can win $200 thanks to our friends over at Lawyer Lisa. We put out a poll on our 1075 The Game Twitter page yesterday that asked if Lenora Settlers can't play on Saturday, who needs to have a big day the most for the Gamecocks to beat Missouri. The options were Nick Harbor, Sol Faison, freshman wide receivers, and tight ends. Faison won by a pretty big landslide with 64% of the vote. We now believe that Sellers is going to be likely on his way to playing this weekend, so I'll restate the question with Make Your Case. Assuming Sellers plays this weekend, who needs to provide him the most help on offense to allow South Carolina to be successful this weekend?
Let me go outside the box here just a little bit. Well, I think naturally, and we had a similar question, I remember, and I think I went with an offensive lineman or something. Yeah, you're going to have to run the ball. You're going to have to give him time to throw. Faison's probably a good answer. I think, based on what we saw in Nick Harbor this past week, too, I thought he had a pretty good game that could have been even a lot bigger against Vandy. Give me number 8, because I think you're going to need somebody to take the top off of this defense. And, everybody was going, hey, where's the deep shot against Vanderbilt? A lot of people I saw even saying, like, hey, well, Vandy was stacking the box. Well, a lot of times they really were not. They were actually playing a soft shell zone coverage, and then they were picking their moments on 3rd and short, on 4th and short. When they brought the house, they truly, brought the house. You're talking, they overloaded you in the blitz game. But a lot of times they were just forcing you to dink and dunk and kind of execute all the way down the field. But I think Harbor, and really the entire receiving corps, needs to create some big plays for you, because I think that would open some things up. We'll see if Missouri sort of has both safeties deep, is a one-high look. We saw Harbor actually make a couple of grabs down the field in this game last year in one-on-one coverage. One-on-one coverage on one of those. The other one, I think, was a corner blitz where the safety didn't get over. He used his speed to get downfield. I think 8 or one of those other receivers needs to have a big breakout.
Does it have to be a player?
Doesn't have to be. If you want to go position group or whatever.
Y'all know me, I think, by now. Wes certainly does.
I would hope so.
And I typically, obviously with a football team, it's the responsibility of the head coach for the entire team, the offensive coordinator for the offense, et cetera, so on and so forth. And so normally when I go to a game, if you're from a matchup standpoint, that basically the question you're asking, Tyler, what's the key? I mean, you could identify so many, who needs to help Sellers the most from a player standpoint. I think you could pick Faison. You could pick Harbor. You could pick a bunch of them. You could pick, the entire O-line.
All 10 other guys.
All 10 other guys, right? You really could. Some better than others. I do think this is a game in which your game plan is going to have to make a big impact. So I would probably pick Mike Shula from the standpoint of, here's why. Missouri, good on defense. That's going to be the case with a lot of people. So you say, Chris, you say Mike Shula is the key in every game, right? But this one, Carolina has been scuffling, as we know, in terms of scoring points, untimely turnovers, procedural penalties, shooting themselves in the foot a lot. So you go into this game already needing to clean that up, which is on the coaching staff ultimately to do that. And then you look at this Missouri team, they've got experience. They're really good. They're disruptive up front. They're going to throw a lot of things at you that have caused you problems all year. They're going to run stunts and twists and blitz from a lot of different directions. They're going to be aggressive. In terms of your game plan, how can you counter that? The coaching staff may say, if we line up and play our game and we play it more clean than we have, I like our chances. And that, to a degree, is certainly true. But I do think with this being a road game where you're going to have to score some points to win, I don't think you're going to be able to rely on just your special teams and defense in this game or going forward like you did in the first couple games to win. It's getting tougher and tougher. We saw against the Vanderbilt game when you're not getting anything from your offense, that affects everything else. And it's going to be tough to win games. It's going to be tough to win this one. So I think from a game plan standpoint, now if you're South Carolina, you've got 3 games of data on yourself. You've got 3 games of data on Missouri. You're going to have to craft a game plan that gives you a better chance because by now you know, okay, we're limited here. We've got some questions here. Here are our strengths. And so if you're Mike Shula, that may be we got to let 16 be 16 a little bit more. And y'all know my thoughts. Carolina isn't saying, they're not running him. I did a whole piece on that, et cetera. But what can you come up with, whatever it is, from a game plan standpoint that can alleviate some of that pressure and give you a better chance? I do think it's a big game on that front.
And I'll go off of that answer because part of the game plan, I feel like, considering how good Missouri is on defense, could be a lot of quick game. And we've seen in Sellers now just over a year at quarterback for South Carolina, has good rapport with tight ends. Obviously, Josh Simon was his leading guy a year ago, and when he's gotten the opportunity to get the ball out to guys like Brady Hunt, to guys like Jordan Dingle so far this year, you've seen success with that. And I think this is the best pass rush you're going to see. You've seen so far this year. Guys like Damon Wilson, Darius Smith, they're going to be coming off the edges, putting a lot of pressure on Sellers. And again, we know he is staying in the pocket more this year than he has a season ago as part of that development of being a quarterback. And I just think, given the fact that you're going to be under pressure a lot, I think getting the ball out very quickly and relying on some of those more sure-handed tight ends is going to be a very, very important part of that game plan that Mike Shula does put together for this weekend to, make it where Sellers doesn't have to sit back there, wait for things to develop downfield, and obviously hope those guys can make plays once they get the ball in their hands. So I would say the group of tight ends is going to be pretty vital in this game as well.
Yeah, and I think that's an area, like you said, they when they've gone to the tight ends, they have had quite a bit of success, and it hasn't necessarily been one guy, but that room has been pretty good. Interesting that tight end Mike Smith, doubtful, according to the report. He had his first career touchdown catch against Missouri last year, right? That was a touchdown, not a 2-point.
I think it was a touchdown in the corner there.
Student section.
Exactly what it looked like. I think it was a touchdown.
Yeah, pretty sure it was. And it's a lot of key, crazy moments in that game. But so you won't.
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, you will not. Well, there's a 75% chance that you won't have him in this game because he's doubtful. So that puts a little bit more. We saw Dingle get involved the most he has since he arrived this past week. Brady Hunt, you would hope maybe he got a full week of practice this week and will be back in the mix. I continue to like the way they use Maurice Brown II in spurts, and, he can help you there. But I, for one, keep waiting on our guy Mike Smith to emerge because I think he is a potential weapon in the passing game, which as of right now looks like you may not have him this week.
We'll come back, wrap up the hour. A little piece of news on the entire college football front in terms of the transfer portal coming out yesterday. We'll hit that as we wrap up the hour. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Thursday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you here, wrapping up Thursday's edition of the show.
Has this been on a rotation, Tyler?
What's that?
Thunderstruck. Has it been on a rotation?
Yeah, it has.
No. It has not.
It just
has not played.
It just hasn't popped in this hour, I guess. It's part of the updated music that we did however long ago.
Oh, I like that song.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Just let it play.
Yeah, it's over now.
That'll put it back up. We'll just play that for the remaining few minutes here. Sit here and listen.
Yeah, just listen to AC/DC for the last couple of minutes. Anyways, lost my train of thought there.
Sorry.
We got some news yesterday reported on by guys like Pete Nakos of On3. And look, this has been talked about a lot. We knew this was likely coming, but we've officially eliminated the spring portal window for the offseason. We're now going to have one transfer portal window for football. Don't know exactly when it's going to be. It's being theorized to be right around the beginning of January once most bowl games and stuff like that are over. But the period of the window being open after spring practice, as it has been the past couple of years, has now officially ended.
Yeah, and so when did it open this past year, Chris? December?
Wasn't it like later December?
They did move it later this year, I think.
Yeah, I recall it being. I actually looked it up the other day.
But it was in December.
Yeah,
it was in December.
The first period was in December. Yes.
And December 9th. Oh, I was thinking when. December 9th until 28th.
Okay. So, what do y'all? Let me just say this. What do y'all think of this?
Well,
because I have a take, but I want to see what y'all think first.
So, here's my very first thought. In the climate we're in, does this hold up, like legally? Right? I mean, you have to ask that question.
You do.
Are there going to be athletes that say, actually, I want to transfer, and you're prohibiting me from doing that? Thus, you're prohibiting me from earning NIL money and other endorsement money, and we don't have any type of structure with any of this. It's all being done just through courts, and then the NCAA making rules, and then getting sued, and then changing the rules. All that kind of thing that's been going on for the past few years. That's my first question. The second is that I like it from this standpoint. We've talked about this a lot. A lot of times you have guys sign an agreement with a collective, with a school, whatever. Basically, get what it takes to get them back for the coming year. And a lot of times that's happening in the off season because you've got the portal openings. So you're getting, some schools here at South Carolina, 10, 20 transfers. And then you've got your guys from your current roster that you've retained. Well, by the time the spring rolls around, even though they've signed a one-year deal, it's, hey, I had a few good practices, coach. Can I get some more money? Right? And so even though you've signed this agreement, it's hard to make it binding, again, because of the climate that we end up, like, just the non-structure that we have. So that creates a lot of problems. Now, one thing maybe cards on the table don't particularly like, it's good business to have portals, 2 of them.
Sure.
Also like that apparently there's some conversation about having a dead period in December, which a lot of coaches want. I think Shane Beamer said that. December is insane right now, guys, with everything going on. Would kind of be nice to get a break from that. So, I don't know. We'll see. I wonder if it's going to hold up. That's like my overarching reaction to all this.
Yeah, because, again, this was done by the NCAA. And, again, typically when they have made changes over the past couple of years, it's landed them in hot water in court some kind of way. If this does end up going through as they needed to, and this is a one-time portal window that's from, they theorize, between January 2nd and January the 11th, where, again, the vast majority of teams have finished their season playing bowls and all that kind of stuff. I do wonder, because this year we saw such a radical shift on the mindset and philosophies of things like spring games, because Matt Rule put it out there, hey, my guy does good in a spring game. I don't want somebody grabbing him in the portal. Immediately after that, do we kind of see that
That excuse
shift?
doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't work anymore. Do you see that go back in the other direction where people are like, okay, I'm not worried about my guy getting snatched up after the spring game. We can have it. We can put it on TV, and I'm not worried anymore.
No, because that was a made-up excuse, not a real one. So
probably
there'll be a new one in its place, more than likely. But I would love for it to go that direction, Tyler. I'd love for us to go the direction of an exhibition against, South Carolina and Furman. Decide, hey, we can use the spring game to get better for the both of us. And here's my thought, though. All right, we got a 10-day window to sort through every need we may have. Chris, you know how quick this stuff moves now. What
Insane.
You know, I need a running back, and I pick, hey, here's the running back I want. I think I have him locked up. We're going to get him on day 2 of the portal. Then on day 9 of the portal, he commits to somewhere else. And now I am, I don't have that spot filled. What do I do from there? Puts a lot of pressure on these director of player personnel guys and general managers who are already under a tremendous amount of pressure. But also, here's what it does, guys. You can tell me the official portal window starts January 2nd, January 3rd, whatever it's going to be. But for the month leading up to that, it's just going to be, it's not going to be portal season. It's going to be tampering season. Everybody's going to already know what they're doing and where they're going during that period anyway. It may not change as much as we think. You're not going to be able to take visits, but how many guys, Chris, are going to do the I am planning to enter the portal?
You've got
right,
to, yeah,
right at the end of the season.
You're going to have to accelerate everything behind the scenes.
So it's going to be, in terms of coverage, though, it's not going to be Johnny Smith has entered the portal. It's going to be Johnny Smith is planning to enter the portal. And then if you're a school and you have millions of dollars at stake, are you telling me if Johnny Smith's entering the portal and you need him to come play running back for you, you're not hitting up his high school gym teacher that you know and being like, hey, we got room for Johnny? Of course you are.
We have the planning to enter the portal with a no contact tag already.
Yes.
There'll be a lot of that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, fitting it into, because the spring portal window, very condensed, also not as busy, but it's the 10-day window. Now, if we put the 10-day window in December when there's a lot more action, I
actually think the window, I know nobody wants to hear it, but I think it needs to be longer if you're only going to have one.
100%. I think so, too. I think it's got to be longer. I'm not just saying that so we can cover it for longer.
You need 2 weekends for visits at least.
Yeah, 10 days.
And I know they visit during the week for portal as well, but your midweek visits are now, these guys are going to be taking 1-day visits. It's going to be, let me drop in. Part of my days are for travel.
Yeah.
There'll be guys taking 5 visits in 10 days.
Maybe in 1 day. Did the coaches want this? Did they want a shorter window? Seems like it's going to make it harder on them.
I think it's one of those things you want it in terms of not losing guys from your roster to an extent, but you don't love it in terms of trying to gain portal transfers into your roster.
So there you go. As of now, the spring portal window has been eliminated. Still waiting to see the exact dates on what the one-time portal window will be coming up at the end of the season. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Up next, halftime show here on the game. right, 12 o'clock on your Thursday afternoon now. Welcome in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave hanging out with you once again on this Thursday afternoon. Joe, how we doing today, man? Oh, we got him up. Got him up, Dave. We're good to go. All right, hold on. Working through some technical issues here with Joe. Try that again, man.
A little bit of a cold
There we
on
go.
StreamYard today. Not with you in person, but happy to be here for the long haul again. Little 3 hours, for the Thursday afternoon. Excited to be here as always, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Again, I said yesterday when we started the show that the plan is for Bill to return on Monday. For those that haven't been keeping up, he has been dealing with some health issues now for, almost 2 months. It's been a while since he's been in here, but we've been talking to him. He's gotten himself to a seemingly good place with all that stuff, and we're excited to have him back in here coming up on Monday, which, again, I appreciate Joe and Scott Hamilton and everybody else that's filled in Jack